Okay, so we'll have a couple of examples of compound if statements. First we'll look at an AND joining two conditions, and then we'll look at an OR joining three conditions. We'll use a familiar program. So before we had a program that collected two values and checked to see whether or not one was greater than or equal to the other. We'll extend that slightly, understanding a third variable. So the program's the same, collects a third variable. I'll just alter that there, and then compares the values. So if number 1 is equal to number 2 and number 2 is equal to number 3, our overall if statement would evaluate to true. We can then output all three values are the same. If that condition is false, so one of these statements isn't correct, then at least one of the values is different. So we can test that. So we're going to ask for three values, 5, 5 and 5, and all three values are the same. So that's great. Let's just see and make sure that it identifies when that's not the case. So 5, 2 and 3. So at least one of the values is different, which appears to be working. And let's move that around a bit, so 5, 2 and 5. So we've got two values the same. And again, at least one of the values is different. So our program appears to be working well. So that's joining two separate conditions together using an AND statement, and they both have to be true for the true case of the else of the if statement to be executed. We'll extend this program slightly now, and what we'll do is we will adding some code to check for a condition when two of the values are the same. So if we get the state that 3 are not equal, let's check to see if any two are the same. This code is principally the same. I've just shortened the names of the variables here just to help it fit on the screen for recording purposes. So just be aware of that when you're typing this in. So our first statement is exactly the same. If I1 is equal to I2 and I2 is equal to I3, then all three values are the same. If we get into the else condition, then this has obviously failed, so at least one of the values is different. So the next logical thing to test for is, well, are any two of the values the same? And we've got three different combinations here. The first two values could be the same, the first and the third values could be the same, or the second and third values could be the same. So if either of those three conditions exists, then we want to output the message two of the values are the same. So we can use ORs to join here. If I1 is equal to I2, or I1 is equal to I3, or I2 is equal to I3. So if any one of those evaluates to true, then we'll get that message two of the values are the same. If that evaluates to false, then none of these have been correct. In other words, all three values are different. So let's just give that a quick test. First of all, check that the original code still works. All three values the same. It does. So let's then check for three separate values. All three values are different. So that's great. And then let's do the more complicated check for any two the same. So 1, 2 and 2. So two of the values are the same. And let's move those two values around a little bit. 1, 2 and 1. So the first and the third are now the same. And that's working. Two of the values are the same. We can get that error message, that output message. And finally, 1, 1 and 5. So two of the values are the same. So those simple examples show you how to join a couple of conditions together using an AND to create a more complicated set of logic, and also how to join, in this case, three things together using an OR. There's no real limit to how many things you can put in a compound statement, but once you get beyond 2 or 3 things, then it becomes difficult for us as programmers to understand. The computer can understand it fine, but it's difficult for us. So if you start getting complicated compound statements, it's sensible to break those up into a series of sub-statements to make it more readable for humans to follow, and then for us to work out whether or not the program's working correctly.